Some parts of this letter are going to be familiar to all of you, and the entire letter may be familiar to some of you. I'm calling it a letter, but it is in reality a wasiyah and a written will that it is narrated Imam Ali alayhi salam, he gave to his two sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, after he had been struck by Ibn Muljam. So there are certain wasaya or certain admonitions of Ahlul Bayt that they would repeat or emphasize at the very last moment of their life about prayer, about not wronging or oppressing anybody who has no helper other than Allah. And we have talked about some of those admonitions, some of those reminders from Ahlul Bayt. This is one such admonition, a reminder from Imam Ali addressed to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, but also to a general audience of Muslims, as we will see in the text of this letter. And it is a reminder of the priorities that Imam Ali wants his sons and his family and more generally his lovers and his followers to keep in their mind during this time in which we are preparing for the month of Ramadan, the worship, the devotion, and the sacrifice that comes with this month. Let us keep this message of Imam Ali in our minds and note the comprehensive aspect of these teachings, which mention ibadah, which mention our commitment and our obligation to our fellow human beings. So this is a will of Imam Ali. It's not going to begin by talking about material property or worldly matters, as the wasaya of the Prophet and all previous prophets and Ahlul Bayt always do. It begins with usikuma bitaqwallah. Usikuma is the dual form. I admonish the two of you. And the address in this sermon, it is in the dual form because the primary addressee is Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. But we will see that then the Imam extends his message. And yet in this dual form, we also have a reminder that Imam Ali, in addition to being the Imam, he is also a father. And Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhim as-salam, in addition to being the successors and heirs of our Prophet after Imam Ali, they are also two sons. And so this is a message from our Imam to the Imams after him. It is a message from our Imam to his family, but it is also a reminder and an example and a model for us of what our legacy should be in our families. If I am a father or a mother, if I have a son or a daughter, then my legacy shouldn't simply be one of material success. It shouldn't simply be one of material or worldly matters. It should be a spiritual legacy. How do I honor my father and my grandfather and my ancestors? And how do I honor the gift that Allah has given me if He has blessed me with children and with offspring? Then Imam Ali is teaching us here in this sermon, what kind of a legacy should we aspire to? Not just what I should tell my son and daughter, you do these things, but what I should do and what I should observe so that they carry on not just my words, but my actions and my character. Usikuma bitaqwallah. The beginning, the end, the goal is always to have piety and remembrance of Allah. وَأَلَّا تَبْغِيَ الدُّنْيَا وَإِن بَغَتْكُمَا. This is the eloquence of Imam Ali. Don't seek the world even if the world seeks you. There are some people, they seek the world even if the world is not necessarily being kind to them. I start a business and it doesn't go well. I get a promotion, and all of a sudden I have increased expenses. And so the world is testing me. It's not a sign of anger of Allah or disfavor, it is a test. The world is keeping me maybe humble. And this is the blessing of Allah, that He is not facilitating me to become arrogant. Maybe I have an extra income, and a relative comes to me or a friend comes to me and says, "Can I have a loan?" I might think of that as unfortunate, but in reality, it is a gift from Allah. Now, I have this additional money, and Allah is offering me an opportunity to earn the greatest reward. If it were just money and I spend it on a good meal or on a vacation or on some toy, it would come to an end. But then when I have an opportunity to use it for the pleasure of Allah, it becomes eternal. Now that bonus that I gained, that tax refund some of you may be getting now in the next few weeks, it's not just going to be spent in a matter of months. It'll stay with you, and it'll become permanent. This is a gift. But then sometimes, وَإِن بَغَتْكُمَا, sometimes the world, it comes chasing after you. You have more money than you know what to do with. You have influence or power or a certain authority that other people in this world, they don't have. Material wealth, resources. That is when many people become complacent, they become arrogant, they forget Allah, they say, "Let me just have fun." The Imam says, even when the world is coming after you and it's seeking you and it's tempting you and it's distracting you, وَأَلَّا تَبْغِيَ الدُّنْيَا وَإِن بَغَتْكُمَا, it's seeking to tempt you and make you forget Allah. Don't chase after this world and don't become a slave of this world. وَلَا تَأْسَفَا عَلَى شَيْءٍ مِّنْهَا زُوِيَ عَنْكُمَا, and don't be sad at any worldly blessing that was taken away from you or that came close and then it didn't reach you. Maybe you thought you were going to get a promotion, you didn't get it. Maybe you thought you were going to close a business deal and earn a big commission and you didn't get it. So sometimes these worldly things that we lose, as if we're in an auction and we're trying to bid and we're competing and we don't have the winning bid, we feel like if only my offer had been accepted, I was able to buy that house. If only I was able to get this, then life would be different and everything would be so much better. I don't know if it would be better or if it would be worse. If I do what I need to do and I make my best effort, then if Allah doesn't give me something, لا تأسفا على شيء منها زوي عنكما, don't be sad if something in this world doesn't come to you. وقولا بالحق وعملا للأجر, speak what is true and what is haqq, and act in accordance with the ajr and the reward of Allah. Don't do things just because of your whim and desire. Don't do things seeking the pleasure or the reward of people. And then the famous statement which all of us have heard and which is like a motto for the followers of Ahlul Bayt, it was a motto for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, وَكُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا, and be for the oppressor an opponent, and for the oppressed a supporter and an assistant. We see this in particular in the events in Palestine. There were many people who said, I have a busy life. I have so many things to do for myself. That's halfway across the world. And then there were people who were inspired by these words of Imam Ali. Somebody is oppressed, I should not be silent. I should take a stand. Maybe the world does not appreciate those who take a stand and sacrifice for the sake of the oppressed. But we who are followers of Ahlul Bayt, in our heart, we should always remember and honor and support and pray for not just the oppressed, but for those people who stand up for the oppressed, even if they are not the ones who are suffering. They are our heroes and they are our role models. Very beautifully, Imam Ali says, وَكُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. Be an opponent of anybody who is a wrongdoer, and be a friend of those and an assistant of those who are oppressed. And of course, this does not know a boundary of religion or race or nationality, and it is not limited to one form of help or one form of opposition. My opposition to oppression is in word, it is in deed where possible and applicable, it is in the heart. My support for the oppressed, it is in word and in deed and in my prayers and in my heart. Then this is where Imam Ali, he extends the wasiyah. He says, أوصيكما وجميع ولدي وأهلي ومن بلغه كتابي. I admonish you, my two sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, and all of my offspring and my family, and anybody who reaches, to whom these words reach, this testament reaches. بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ وَنَظْمِ أَمْرِكُمْ. Be conscious of Allah, be pious towards Allah, organize your affairs, وَصَلَاحِ ذَاتِ بَيْنِكُمْ. And then try to mend relationships among yourselves. فَإِنِّي سَمِعْتُ جَدَّكُمَا صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ يَقُولُ صَلَاحُ ذَاتِ الْبَيْنِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ عَامَّةِ الصَّلَاةِ وَالصِّيَامِ. I have heard, Imam Ali says, your grandfather, who is the messenger of Allah, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, say that to better the relationships and the affairs of Muslims, if two people are not seeing eye to eye and they are fighting, or they are maybe giving each other a silent treatment, or they are speaking ill of each other, or they are thinking negative thoughts about each other, in a community, in a family, in a circle of friends and acquaintances, then to try to bring them together and to lessen that barrier that is Islahu Dhatil Bayn. And Imam Ali says that he heard the Prophet say that Islahu Dhatil Bayn is better than the generality of our prayer and our fasting. Sometimes we do a lot of recommended acts of worship, and we think that we are coming very close to Allah because I'm fasting these recommended days of Sha'ban, or I'm doing recommended prayers. They are good, they are important. But sometimes bringing two people together who may have been fighting, that is even greater and more pleasing to Allah and a higher reward. Now, some of us, it's not that we have to learn to bring people together, we have to learn not to add fuel to the fire. So when we find out people are not doing well, we go and we say, what is the gossip? What is the story? What is going on? Maybe sometimes we hear something that a person said in anger or frustration or an unkind word, and we tell the other person, did you hear this? So it's not that we have to do Salahu Dhatil Bayn, but we have to stop doing fasad. We have to stop making things worse. That is the first step. Inshallah, hopefully we've moved past that. We are not carrying fuel for the fire and being like Hammalatul Hatab, adding fuel to the fire of people's mutual anger and adding fuel to the fire of our own punishment in the hereafter. We are not making things worse. Then the next step is, maybe if you hear something unkind, give a gentle defense of that person. If somebody says that, this person ignores me, say that, every time I've heard them, they've said something positive. This is one of those cases where you can use tawriya, meaning you don't tell an outright lie, but you kind of fudge the truth a little bit. Every time I've heard them speak, I've heard them say something positive. That person might think that they're speaking positive about them, that I'm speaking in a general manner, that they say good things, they enjoy their dessert and they say positive things about that cheesecake that they eat after lunch. So I'm fudging the truth a little bit, no pun intended, in order to reduce a barrier and a disagreement between people. Then, the next thing, Imam Ali, he says, Allah, Allah fil aytam. Remember Allah with respect to orphans. And right now, in the Muslim world, in particular, among those people who were unjustly attacked in Palestine, in Lebanon, and in so many other areas in Iraq, in Parachinar, in Pakistan, in many other areas, we have orphans. Imam Ali was somebody who was known, and all of Ahlul Bayt were known, as very closely attached to orphans. And Imam Ali, he says, this is also the eloquence of Imam Ali, فَلَا تُغِبُّوا أَفْوَاهَهُمْ وَلَا يَضِيعُوا بِحَضْرَتِكُمْ. لَا تُغِبُّوا أَفْوَاهَهُمْ. Imam Ali says, when you deal with orphans, don't go one day and give them some help and then ignore them the next day. Ghib means something you do one day, you don't do it the next day, so every other day. What Imam Ali is saying is that don't just say that, it's Thanksgiving, it's the end of the year, I should get a tax receipt for donations, or it's a special season for giving, so let me remember those who are needy. And then you do your good day for the year. When it comes to orphans, remember that just like I have to eat every single day, I can't say that, I ate in December, that's good, I'll hibernate until June. Well, orphans also, they need to eat and survive, and don't just come one day and then ignore them for one day or for a period of time. وَلَا يَضِيعُوا بِحَضْرَتِكُمْ. Don't live in such a way that in your community among mu'mineen, sons and daughters of my brother and sister, they're my family, they should be my children, they should not suffer while I am able to help, while I am present. وَاللَّهَ اللَّهَ فِي جِيرَانِكُمْ. Then Imam Ali, he mentions your neighbors. And he says, فَإِنَّهُمْ وَصِيَّةُ نَبِيِّكُمْ مَا زَالَ يُوصِي بِهِمْ حَتَّى ظَنَنَّا أَنَّهُ يُورِثُهُمْ. The Prophet, he used to give us so much advice and recommendation in favor of our neighbors that we suspected that maybe he's going to say that your neighbors have a share of your inheritance. And of course, the neighbors don't have a share in inheritance that is defined in the Quran and in a hadith who is an heir, but it shows the importance of looking after and taking care of our neighbors. And this also is without regard to religion or relationship, but simply the sanctity of the relationship of being a neighbor. And it's important for Muslims in particular, because sometimes people have that impression that Muslims, they keep to themselves, they come wearing their weird clothing, and they don't really have any relationship with their neighbors. So we should be familiar, and we should be on cordial terms and take care of our neighbors. وَاللَّهَ اللَّهَ فِي الصَّلَاةِ فَإِنَّهَا عَمُودُ دِينِكُمْ. Remember your prayer, it is the foundation, it is the pillar of your religion. وَاللَّهَ اللَّهَ فِي بَيْتِ رَبِّكُمْ. Remember the house of Allah, the Kaaba, Hajj and Umrah, in particular when the month of Ramadan comes. One of the du'as that is repeated in all of the du'as that we have received from Ahlul Bayt is, "Oh Allah, give us the opportunity to visit your house." And of course, when we go for the visitation of the house of Allah, Hajj or Umrah, we also get the blessing of the visitation of the Masjid of the Prophet and the grave of the Prophet and members of his family, Ahlul Bayt, 4 of our Imams. So this is something that we should not be negligent of. وَاللَّهَ اللَّهَ فِي الْجِهَادِ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ وَأَلْسِنَتِكُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. The Imam says that always be conscious, struggle in the way of Allah with your money, with yourselves, with your tongues. Volunteer yourself. Your words, your presence and your actions and your expertise and your money for the sake of Allah. Now what can you do in the sake of Allah? That doesn't just mean you go on the battlefield. Our community needs people to step forward and say that my extra time it's not just going to go to a hobby or to something that is fun. Yes, you need a time for recreation, you need a time for exercise, you need a time for relaxation. But then my energy and my resources, they are going to serve the path of Allah in our masajid, in our organizations, in our institutions, to strengthen and to build those institutions, not just where I want to benefit, but where it will be of benefit to my community. I might not be somebody who needs facilities for senior living, but there are other members of my community who have that need. I may not be somebody who has a need for daycare for children, but there are other people who need that. I might not need help getting a job or getting oriented in a new country or a new city as an immigrant or as somebody who has moved or as a refugee, but there are other people who have that need. So that is how you serve the path of Allah. Don't just come and say, what's going to benefit me? And then I will contribute to those institutions that I will benefit from. You do that, but then you also contribute for the sake of Allah, where it spreads the message of Allah and it helps the creation of Allah. And then the Imam, he emphasizes the importance of mutual contact and good relations. This is something that we need to be very conscious of. In our time, loneliness is one of the greatest diseases that damages people's physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And it functions like a disease. And it damages a person no less than other ailments. The Imam, he has given us a reminder of what the cure is. It's not just to have friends, but to have friends who are for the sake of Allah. That relationship, it is not just company, but it is also a spiritual cure for our ailments. وَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالتَّوَاصُلِ وَالتَّبَاذُلِ. Stay in touch with each other and spend on each other. Give of yourselves and gifts and generosity and hosting with one another. وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَالتَّدَابُرُ وَالتَّقَاطُعُ. And avoid turning away from each other and cutting off your ties and not being in touch with each other. And then the Imam, he continues, وَلَا تَتْرُكُوا الْأَمْرَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهْيَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ فَيُوَلَّى عَلَيْكُمْ شِرَارُكُمْ ثُمَّ تَدْعُونَ فَلَا يُسْتَجَابُ لَكُمْ. If you avoid enjoining what is good and forbidding what is evil, then you will find that the people in authority among you will be the worst of you. And you will pray and Allah will not answer your prayers. Why? Because Allah will answer your prayers if you are working towards the fulfillment of your prayer. But if I'm sitting sick at home and I say, Allah cure me, but I don't go and seek treatment, then Allah is not going to answer that prayer. If I go and seek treatment, then it is not the doctor or the medicine or that new drug which is going to give me cure. It is Allah which will give me cure through those means. So similarly, for all of the things that we complain about in society, we say our leaders are corrupt, our politicians are corrupt, our institutions are corrupt. That is not the reality and that is not the solution. You be the change that you are praying for, and then Allah will bless your efforts. And if you enjoin what is good, forbid what is evil, practice what is good, and avoid what is evil, then you will see that your politicians, your leaders, your institutions, and all of those things in society, they will also change for the better. These are a few of the reminders of Imam Ali. If you would like to review, it is letter number 47, the wasiyah of Imam Ali for his two sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, and for his family, and for all of those who read and benefit from his guidance, in particular for his Shia and for his followers, and for the mu'mineen. May Allah allow us to learn and benefit from these reminders and instructions of our Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna a'ataynaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. صلوات. After praising Allah for His bounties and seeking forgiveness from Allah for my own sins and on behalf of all of us present and all mu'mineen and mu'minat for our sins and shortcomings, just a brief reminder of the conclusion of this will of Imam Ali. Superficially, this last portion pertains particularly to the family of Imam Ali, because remember, these words were spoken by Imam Ali after he had been struck by Ibn Muljam. So you can imagine the state that Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Zainab, Kulthum, and Abbas, and all of the other family members and children in particular of the Imam, they would be in the greatest state of prayer and grief. And Imam Ali, he gives these reminders about the priorities of our religion. This is consolation for the family. That yes, you are losing Imam Ali. He is on his deathbed. But his message, his legacy, the efforts and the struggles of his life, that continues. A martyr dies, but the path of that martyr does not die. As you remember the martyrs, whether in history or in our own time, as we bury them, we lay them to rest, then we are not bidding farewell, but rather we are committing that what they struggled for and what they died for, that is part of our life, and that it lives. And it is consolation to know that even if you are bidding farewell to, in this case, Imam Ali, in our time, maybe somebody who has died in the path and in the service of the mission of Allah, that their soul and their struggle, it will live on through, inshallah, our efforts and our prayers. Imam Ali, he says to his family that if I die, then don't go and take revenge on anybody but the person who caused my death. Don't blame anybody but the person who killed me. And if he struck one blow, then if I die, you strike one blow on him as well. And this is the commitment of Imam Ali to justice, that even with respect to the person who killed him, Imam Ali, he says that he should not be treated with cruelty, he should be treated with justice. And in your grief and in your anger, you should not blame anybody but the guilty party. And that is a general principle for us. Sometimes I have a legitimate disagreement with one person, and then I extend it to their whole family. Sometimes I may have had a bad experience with one person from a certain country, and then I say everybody from this country, they are like that. I stereotype and I generalize, and I make these kinds of conclusions. Imam Ali, he reminds us that whatever it might be, if you have an injustice, then only blame that guilty party. Don't generalize it, and don't go outside of the path of justice. May Allah guide us to fulfill these final instructions of our Imam throughout our life. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون صلوا على محمد وآل محمد